2,000 years ago, a son was born. A little bit more than 2,000 years. But a family had a son born in their family. And oh, they were filled with so much joy. Because in the Jewish culture, it's such an amazing gift of God to have a son. Daughters are amazing. But in a culture that was set up on the laws of Moses, that was set up on the passing on of the name, that was set up on just the way ancient cultures were, a son's a blessing. And just like every Jewish family, on the 8th day, the family took this son to the synagogue to have him circumcised. And things were going great. Things were going so amazing. They named him. He was blessed by the rabbi. And they lived with hope and expectations of their son doing amazing things, with hope and expectations that their son was going to be a blessing to others. A couple of weeks went by, and the family started to notice something about their son. As he would play, as he would reach out for food, as he would do baby things, his focus was just off. It just wasn't right. But a lot of kids, when they're babies, have a hard time focusing any further than 10 inches. That's why they like watching hockey so much on TV, because so much stuff is going on. It gives them a whole bunch of entertainment. It's just a big blur of stuff. But after a couple of more months went by, and as their son started moving more and started crawling and started playing and started reaching out for objects, what they noticed was his focus wasn't there at all. They realized that he had been born blind. They realized that his vision was not there. He sensed the world by touch, by taste. He sensed the world by hearing. But he didn't look towards the sounds. He didn't look at what he was touching. And the family started to worry and started to be super concerned. People at the synagogue, at church on Saturday, started noticing that something was a little off with the son. Ladies would come and take care of him while he was crying so that the parents could participate in the worship assembly. And they started noticing, and they started talking. As he grew and began to walk, it was pretty obvious that he was blind. And as he became a 5-year-old, everybody in town, in the city, knew him. He was the blind boy. He was the one that had no vision. He was the one that needed to be led either by hand, by touch, or by voice, so that he wouldn't run into walls when he was in a place he wasn't used to. He was the one that could walk around places he was used to out of remembrance, but not out of sight. His family had such high hopes for him. His family had hopes that he would provide for them as they got older. His mom and dad had hopes that he would be the one to be able to take care of them when the dad couldn't work any longer. But at the age of 5, and as he continued to get older, those hopes were shattered. When they came into the synagogue on Saturday mornings to worship God, to hear the Torah being read, they had to sit in the back, because they didn't want their son to be in other people's ways as they were leaving. Everybody looked at him and looked at him with grief. And as he got older and started understanding more what was going on, he understood the conversations that were about him, where people wouldn't really use his name, but he knew they were talking about him. He's got no hope. He's got no future. The only thing that he's going to be able to do, he can't provide. The only thing he will do in the future is he will be a taker. They talked about him becoming a beggar, just like all the other blind kids of the city. They talked about him and his parents too. The main conversation that happened behind the scenes that he was able to hear very clearly, because that sense worked, was, Was he born blind because of his sin or because of the sins of his parents? See, this young man was born 2,000 plus years ago into a culture with a worldview that if you have something wrong with you, that you don't look like everybody else, you don't function like everybody else, it's because sin has corrupted your family or you. Even in the womb, they thought that it was possible that you sinned. So you were an outcast. You didn't fit in. You couldn't follow the rules of Moses. You couldn't follow the Torah, the law, because you had already broken it. It's obvious. He looked physically broken as he walked around and bumped into obstacles that everybody else knew were there. And in their worldview, he was a taker. He was a beggar. That's what he would become. In John chapter 9, John talks about this man. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And the disciples asked Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" You see, the worldview that took part in that day, that if somebody was born with an imperfection or their family was poorer than others, they were socially lower on an economic scale, or just that some huge problem came about on the family. Maybe they lost a loved one. Maybe there was illness that was suffering going on. What was thought during that day is if everything's not going right for you, everything's not going perfect, if you're sitting on the corner begging in order to be able to have a meal for that day, it's because somebody had sinned in the past, and it is affecting you. A little over 2,000 years ago today, another son was born. This son was born with expectation as well, with hope. Because the angels had come and told the father and the mother that you're going to have a child. And this child will be called Emmanuel, God with us. And this child will save and redeem the lost of Israel. He will take care of them. This young man grew up awkwardly as well. His brothers didn't really recognize who he was. They often gave him a hard time about the fact that he only kind of fit in the family, about the fact that his mother kind of doted on him a little bit more than all the other kids. But as this young man grew up, he ended up running into the other young man that was born blind. And here's what happens. As his disciples are passing by, they ask him, "Rabbi, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his sin or the sin of his parents?" And Jesus says this, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him." Completely changing his world. Completely redoing the worldview that he had grown up with. The idea that no matter what, he was just a broken instrument, a broken vessel. Somebody that was only for taking out of society, but never able to give because of his blindness. And this man who came, who was being called a rabbi, said something different than anybody has ever said to him before. You weren't born blind because of sin, because of your own, or because of somebody else's, but because God's grace, God's work will be revealed, displayed in you. Jesus continues to say to him, "We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Having said these things, Jesus spat on the ground and made mud with saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. This morning I want to talk to you about holiness. We've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks. Denny's done a fantastic job of revealing the truth that God is making his world holy. That when he created it, he meant it to be holy, and when corruption came because of sin, that God is in the holiness business. He is in the refining business. He is in the business of making sure things get back to the way that he intended it to be. And so he sent his one and only Son, who became the embodiment of holiness on earth. God has a mission. And his mission is holiness. His mission is to change things from the worldview that's broken, that says that anybody who has any bit of brokenness, whatever it is, he's going to heal it and he's going to fix it. About a year ago, I saw a video that I had to watch multiple times because, oh man. First time I saw it, I was in tears. Second time I saw it, I was just in awe. Third time I saw it, I was in wonder, going, wow, this was so amazing. And I want to share this video with you because I think it teaches us something about Jesus' mission for holiness in our lives. What an amazing video. What an amazing act that these people went through in order to bless this young man that has had hearing problems his whole life. I love how the video begins. He comes out of his house, everything's normal. He's used to not being able to hear. He's there with his sister, and they're walking around, and things are going well, and he bumps into somebody, and that somebody signs to him, and he's like, did you guys notice that? He says to her, do you know him? Because for people that are impaired in one of their senses, they tend to build community in the area that they're with. They know each other. They know that there's other people that I can talk to that are able to sign. Or for the blind people, that there are other people that I can relate with that can't see like I do. And I just wonder if 2,000 years ago, as Jesus is walking in John chapter 9, if that blind man doesn't know other blind people and relates with them, already knows about the pool of Siloam as being a place where healing happens for the lame, the blind, the deaf, those that are broken, and in a worldview where they are considered downright sinners, even though they didn't do anything. And this man goes through his town through a normal day going to get a bagel, and people are relating it with him in a way that they've never related with him before. Because you know what? What probably happened before is they would talk to him, and he wouldn't be able to respond because he had no idea what they were saying. But they spend a month. I don't know if you caught that. At the beginning of the video, they share the truth that they spent a month planning for this 5-minute, maybe 15-minute period in this guy's life. They spend a whole entire month preparing, learning how to do sign language for the ones who've never done it before, making sure that the taxi driver shows up at just the right time, or the man buying fruit spills the bag of fruit at just the right time to impact this man's life and to change it. Did you see the joy that he had at the end of that video? He just couldn't express himself as everybody came, as he got to see the people that had spent a month of their life to do something that what he might consider incredibly huge, they probably considered kind of small. We learned a couple of signs, such as the taxi driver just said, "Hi, welcome." But yet, this getting together, this mission that they had to provide a change in this man's life changed him in an amazing way. And I don't know about you, but it changes me just watching it happen. It makes me want to think to myself, what can I do? What are the small little minute details I can do to bring change in somebody else's life that is just struggling with an aspect of life? How can I watch out for that? But you know what? I'm going to be honest. As I think that way, I begin to fall prey to the same thing that the disciples were thinking as they were walking with Jesus on that day when a man that was born 2,000 years ago, different than everybody else, encountered another man that was born different than everybody else. And he was the embodiment of holiness. When I think about what I can do for other people and only think about that as if I'm this really great being that I can bring blessings, so I need to make sure I can bring blessings. As I think about that, I begin to miss something of what Jesus does here in John chapter 9. Jesus heals him. Says that he wasn't born blind because of his sins or the sins of his family, but that my works may be revealed in him. As we continue on the story in John chapter 9, we watch this man change almost within a day. Jesus heals him on the Sabbath. And so after washing, he comes back and no longer is sitting at the gate begging, but now he's talking to people, his neighbors, his friends, and people are noticing that, hey, isn't this the guy that was blind that we've always passed by? Isn't this the taker? And they're like, no, this can't be him. This must be a double. This must be his doppelganger, if they had that term back in the day. And his neighbor's like, no, I really think it's him. And the Pharisees get wind of this truth that there was a miracle, and they don't deny the miracle at all. For what the Pharisees should have done as they fight against Jesus and don't listen to him and believe in him would be to say, this wasn't true. But instead what they say is, you aren't the same guy. And they start talking to him and say, are you really him? And he says, yeah. They get his parents as witnesses, which is normal, and they ask the parents, is this your son? And they respond, yeah, this is our son, but we're not going to say anything else because knowing deep down in their hearts, they're worried about getting kicked out of the synagogue for knowing Jesus and referencing the miracles that he's doing. And what I love about this man that has that Jesus mission of holiness impacts his life and changes him and gives him sight. What I love about him is he becomes a missionary himself at that moment. As he's talking to the Pharisees, as they're talking to him and asking him about Jesus, who did this miracle for you? And he says, it's Jesus. They say, there's no way it was Jesus. He's evil. He does these things by the devil. And he responds, how can anything good be from anybody else except from God? For nobody who's been born blind has ever been able to receive his sight before. And they say, well, this guy's a Nazareth. He's from an area where the socially pushed down people live, where the people that aren't as pure-blooded as us live. Nothing good comes from Nazareth. did this really happen to you? And the man responds in such an amazing way. Do you want to become his disciple too? You've got a lot of questions about him. He healed me. I'm able to see now. His mission of holiness has impacted my life in such a way that my life is just completely changed. Do you want to know about him as well? And what's interesting is he still doesn't know much about Jesus, but yet he's talking about Jesus in a way, and with courage, with integrity, and with strength. And they kick him out of the synagogue. And as he's kicked out, Jesus finds out about it and runs into him. And Jesus says to him, do you know who the Son of God is? And he says, no, sir. Tell me that I might believe in him. And he says, I am he. And he says, I believe. See, the truth is, as I watch that video that's up there, my initial instinct is to go, that's awesome. I want to be one of those people that's coordinated in that effort. And I want to be somebody who serves. But as I watch that video more and more, I noticed the people that were also blessed in the midst of this mission of holiness, as this man who has lost his hearing is able to interact with a community of people instead of just a sister for this daily walk that he goes on. Do you notice the joy of the man that dropped the fruit? I know he had planned on giving him some fruit because that was the sign language that he used, but did you notice his face just radiating? Did you notice the taxi driver's joy? Did you notice the joy of everybody in that, especially at the end as they all come together and welcome him and say, hey, we've been preparing this for you because we want to bless you. Do you notice the blessing that they receive? One of the truths that we have to understand is that all of us are broken. What they did not get 2,000 plus years ago in their worldview, and what we're still not getting all the time, is the truth that there is brokenness in the world because there is warfare, there's spiritual warfare that's going on. Were we born with brokenness? No. We were not born with brokenness because of our own sin. We were born with brokenness because there's brokenness. And Jesus has come to change that so that the works of God may be revealed in us. I love Colossians chapter 3, what Paul shares with the church there. He says to them, put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. He begins this discourse of, hey, here's who you are in Christ. You are broken people that are saved. Regardless, whatever it is that holds you down, whatever powers it is of the world that makes you feel like you're not enough, you are enough because Jesus came to save you. And not only are you enough, Jesus' mission of holiness has impacted your life. Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. What Paul is sharing here in this discourse to the church in Colossae, he's saying to them, hey, you guys are made holy now. You're part of this mission where not only do you receive healing from your brokenness, but you're a person that also gives healing from brokenness. You share compassion, kindness, humility. When somebody sins against you, you don't go and make it right with vengeance, but with forgiveness, with healing. The truth is, God's plan for destroying the principalities and the spiritual beings that are at war with his creation, the truth is God's plan was to send the embodiment of his holiness in his Son to come down here. And let's be honest, you see it in Scripture and you know it's true. When Jesus went to the cross, they thought that they had beat God. And the truth is, that was Christ's that's God's greatest victory. The backwardness, the weakness of it, the giving up of his life of it is who we are to become. Because we as the people of God will only live into the mission of holiness if we recognize that we serve other people and bless them because we are people that need to be served and blessed. We're able to receive God's holiness because there's something about each and every single one of us that could be better. I wish I could run faster. You might wish that you had a better ability to communicate God's love. You might wish that you had more wealth to be able to bless people. Or you might wish that you had more poorness to not be led astray by the problems of a lot of wealth, such as the rich young ruler that Jesus encounters. But God changes everything. He changes everything in Jesus. I love what Peter says in 1 Peter. He says, as you come to him, a living stone who was rejected by men, but in the sight of God, chosen and precious, you yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. As the world rejects us, God accepts us and says, you're my holy priesthood. You're my royal nation. You are my people. You are living stones. Because Jesus is the living stone. He's the cornerstone on which everything is being built. And we have life because of Jesus. In John chapter 9, when Jesus returns, here's the man that was cast out. And having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? The blind man, or the guy that was once blind, answered, and who is he, sir, that I might believe in him? Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. And he said, Lord, I believe. Jesus said, for judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Jesus' mission is to open our eyes to the truth, the reality that he's the only way to holiness. That as God refines the world, as God brings the world back to the state that God intended for it to be, as God has relationship with us in an amazing way, Jesus is the only way for our eyes to be open, for our ears to be open, for us to live. And Jesus does it in serving in such an amazing way that those who are weak may be strong. It's foolishness. It's backwards. It's not right. It's not the way that the world thinks that things should go. But Jesus does it. Jesus uses a man who's possessed by demons to go to the Decapolis, to 10 cities after casting out the legion, to share the truth, the good news of the kingdom of heaven. Jesus heals the sick. And they go and talk about the fact that their leprosy's gone, even though he tells them to be quiet about it. They go and declare that my skin was white, I was losing all sensation, and I have been healed. The kingdom of heaven is here. Jesus goes to the poor and feeds them. He goes to the thirsty and gives them something to drink, that they may go to the poor and feed them, and go to the thirsty and give them something to drink. Jesus raises people from the dead, and they declare the truth that he is Lord. You and I are on a mission of holiness. God's plan in Jesus Christ is for us to impact the world, not only in Laredo, Texas, not only in Ukraine, not in Brazil, not only in Africa, not only wherever else that you tend to think when you think of mission, but here in Neosho, here in your very own homes. He's taken the weak things of the world and made us strong. I want to encourage you, church. You are holy. You are a holy priesthood, God's holy nation. Jesus changed the world when he went on that cross and gave up his life. Are you ready to serve and be served? In humbleness and meekness, being compassionate, being loving. I encourage you to stand up and help others. To maybe put something together for somebody that you know who has, I don't know, maybe they're struggling with walking. And you get together with a group of friends, and knowing that they love going to the river, you help them get to the river and spend a day fishing when they haven't done it for quite a while because their legs have been weak. Whatever it is that you come up with, dream, trust in God that he has come to make us holy, a royal nation. He's come to make us different than the rest of the world, that the world may be different. God's got a mission, and it's only through the holiness that's brought by his Son, Jesus Christ. I encourage you, church. The Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face upon you and give you peace. I pray that you're blessed this week to share holiness with others.